Hello, student. Today I am going to start a new chapter of Honeydew, a visit to Cambridge. Well, before starting this chapter, let me give a short introduction. So, A Visit to Cambridge is written by Firdaus Kanga, writer and journalist from Mumbai. He was born with brittle bones that tended to break easily when he was a child. The lesson gives us a glimpse of the meeting between Firdaus Kanga and Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest scientists of our time, suffered from a form of paralysis that confined him to a wheelchair and allowed him to speak only by punching buttons on a computer, which speaks for him in a machine like voice. Both these men moved around in wheelchairs. It was during Firdaus Kanga's visit to Cambridge that they met each other. Now, let's start with the chapter. So, Cambridge was my metaphor for England, and it was strange that when I left, it had become altogether something else because I had met Stephen Hawking there. So, my student, the author begins by telling the readers that at some point in life, England only meant Cambridge for him and nothing more. He further remarked that after his meeting with Stephen Hawking, the meaning and relevance of England in his life changed completely. Now, coming to the second paragraph, it was on a walking tour through Cambridge that the guide mentioned Stephen Hawking, poor man who is quite disabled now, though he is a worthy successor to Isaac Newton, whose chair he has at the university. And I started because I had quite forgotten that this most brilliant and completely paralyzed astrophysics, the author of A Brief History of Time, one of the biggest bestsellers ever lived here. So, student, the author he mentions that he happened to be on a walking tour through Cambridge when his guide spoke about Stephen Hawking. The guide called him a poor man because he was differently abled. He even told the author that Stephen Hawking now holds the position in the university which was earlier held by Isaac Newton. The author reveals that before the guide had mentioned, he had forgotten that Stephen Hawking, most brilliant and completely paralyzed astrophysics, the author of one of the biggest bestseller ever, A Brief History of Time, lived here. Now, student, coming to the next paragraph. When the walking tour was done, I rushed to a phone booth and, almost tearing the cord so it could reach me outside, phoned Stephen Hawking's house. There was his assistant on the line, and I told him I had come in a wheelchair from India. Perhaps he thought I propelled myself in the way to write about my travels in Britain. I had to see Professor Hawking. Even 10 minutes would do. Half an hour, he said, from 3:30 to 4. So, once the walking tour came to an end, the author hurried to the nearest phone booth and stretched the cord to the extent of almost tearing so that it could reach him outside the booth because he was on a wheelchair. He called Stephen Hawking's residence, where his assistant answered the call. The author introduced himself as someone who came all the way from India, which the assistant must have taken in the literal sense that he traveled all the way from India on a wheelchair to write about his traveling experience in Britain. The author explained that he needed to see Professor Hawking even if it meant only for 10 minutes. But the assistant gave him a 30-minute slot from 3:30 to 4 for the next day. And suddenly, I felt weak all over. Growing up disabled, You get fed up with people asking you to be brave as if you have a courage account on which you are too lazy to draw a check. The only thing that makes you stronger is seeing somebody like you achieving something huge. Then you know how much is possible and you reach out further than you ever thought you could. So, the author began feeling weak at that moment. He relates how one is constantly told to be brave and cheerful when you grow up being differently abled as if it were that easy. He mentions that people think one who is different is just lazy to draw a check on their courage account. In such a situation, the only thing that gives you courage and strength is seeing people like you do something big. It is only then you know there is hope and possibility which makes you go beyond your limits and imagination. Now, coming to the next paragraph. I haven't been brave, said his disembodied computer voice the next afternoon. I had no choice. Surely, I wanted to say, living creatively with the reality of his disintegrating body was a choice, but I kept quiet because I felt guilty every time I spoke to him, forcing him to respond. There he was, tapping at the little switch in his hand, trying to find the words on his computer with the only bit of movement left to him, his long, pale fingers. Even so often, his eyes would shut in frustrated exhaustion, and sitting opposite him, I could feel his anguish, the mind buoyant with thoughts that came out in frozen phrases and sentences stiff as corpses. So, the next afternoon, when he went to see him, Stephen Hawking told him that he hadn't been brave. He spoke in his disembodied computer voice that he had no other option. The author wanted to reply that living so creatively, even with his disabilities, was a brave choice, but he refrained from doing so as his guilt took over every time he pushed Stephen Hawking to respond by talking to him. He spoke by finding the words on his computer and then tapping a little switch in his hand with the only remaining movement left in his pale and long fingers. He would get easily fatigued and would shut his eyes every now and then in frustration. The author mentions how he could feel Hawking's pain as he thoughts in his intensively active and vibrant mind came out emotionless and stiff as a corpse. Now, a lot of people seem to think that disabled people are chronically unhappy. I said, I know that's not true myself. Are you often laughing inside? About 3 minutes later, he responded, I find it amusing when people patronize me. And do you find it annoying when someone like me comes and disturbs you in your work? The answer flashed yes. Then he smiled his one way smile, and I knew without being sentimental or silly that I was looking at one of the most beautiful men in the world. So, student, the author he expresses how most people think that people with different abilities are constantly sad and miserable, but as far as he is talking about himself, it is not true. He asked Hawking if it was true for him or was he laughing on the inside. It took Hawking almost 3 minutes to respond. He finds it entertaining when people are only kind to him because of his different abilities. The author further asks him if he feels irritated when people like him come and help him away from his work, to which he answered a firm yes. After that, Stephen smiled his one way smile, not giving in to emotions, but the author knew for sure that he was looking at one of the most beautiful and wonderful men in the world. Now, coming to the next paragraph, a first glimpse of him. Now, a first glimpse of him is shocking because He is like a still photograph, as if all those pictures of him in magazines and newspaper have turned three-dimensional. Then you see the head twisted sideways into a slump, the torso shrunk inside the pale blue shirt, the wasted legs. You look at his eyes, which can speak still, and they are saying something huge and urgent. It is hard to tell what, but you are shaken because you have been something you never thought could be seen. So, the author he mentions how the first glance of Hawking startles you because he is motionless just as a photograph. It seems that all his photos in magazines and newspaper have become three-dimensional, but still, as you notice him further, his head is turned sideways limply. The upper part of the body is shrunk inside his dull blue shirt and legs weak. His eyes appear as if they can speak. They are still yet trying to speak something of great significance and urgency. Although what they are saying is hard to decipher, having looked at him shakes you up completely because your eyes have something completely unexpected. Now, moving to the next paragraph. Before you, like a lantern whose walls are worn so thin you glimpse only the light inside, is the incandescence of a man. The body, almost irrelevant, exists only like a cast made of shadows. So that I, no believer in internal souls, know that this is what each of us is. Everything else is an accessory. So, when you see him, it appears as if he is like a lantern whose walls are so worn out that you only see the light inside. Yes, before you is the inner glow of a man. It makes you feel that the body is irrelevant and exists only like a case made of shadows. It even makes the author a non believer in internal souls. One realizes that a man is no more than that. Everything else is just not essential. So, now moving to the next paragraph. What do you think is the best thing about being disabled? I had asked him earlier. I don't think there is anything good about being disabled. I think, I said, you do discover how much kindness there is in the world. Yes, he said. It was a disadvantage of his voice synthesizers that it could convey no inflection, no shades or tone, and I could not tell how enthusiastically he agreed with me. So, student, the author he asked Stephen what according to him was the best thing about being differently able, to which Hawking he replied that he did not find anything good about it. The author then expressed that he thinks it makes you discover that there is so much kindness in the world. Stephen agreed, but due to his voice synthesizer, the author could not decipher the excitement behind his answer as there is a disadvantage that comes with it, that it conveys no inflection, shade, or tone. Now, moving to the next paragraph. Every time I shifted in my chair or turned my wrist to catch the time, I wanted to make every one of our 30 minutes count. I felt a huge relief and exhilaration in the possibilities of my body. How little it mattered then that I would never walk or even stand. The author mentions that each time he adjusted himself in his chair or had a look at his wristwatch to track time. He wanted to make sure that no single minute of the meeting went wasted. He adds that he was relieved and happy about the limited possibilities his body had to offer. In that moment, it almost did not matter to the author that he would never be able to walk or even stand for that matter. Now, coming to the next paragraph, I told him how he had been an inspiration beyond Klitsch for me and surely for others. Did that thought help him? No, he said, and I thought how foolish I was to ask. When your body is a claustrophobic room and the walls are growing narrower day by day, it does not do much good to know that there are people outside smiling with admiration to see you breathing still. So, student, the author, he confessed to him that how Stephen had inspired him beyond limits, and he was sure that he must have inspired a lot of others. He asked if this fact made it any better for Stephen. Stephen said that it didn't. On hearing his answer, the author felt foolish for even asking such a question. This is because Stephen Hawking feels when your own body is like a very small and suffocating room whose walls are getting closer day by day, the fact that people out there are happy that you are alive does not make much of a difference for you. Now, coming to the next paragraph. Is there any advice you can give disabled people, something that might help make life better? They should concentrate on what they are good at. I think things like the Disabled Olympics are a waste of time. I know what you mean. I remembered the years I had spent trying to play a Spanish guitar considerably larger than I was, and how gleefully I had unstringed it one night. The half hour was up. I think I've annoyed you enough, I said, grinning. Thank you for. Stay! I waited. Have some tea. I can show you the garden. The garden was as big as a park, but Stephen Hawking covered every inch, rumbling along in his motorized wheelchair while I dove to keep out the way. We couldn't talk very much. The sun made him silent, the letters on his screen disappearing in the glare. So, student, the author asked Stephen if he would like to give a piece of advice to other differently able people, which would help make life a little easier for them. Stephen said that they should focus on their strengths and what they are good at. According to Stephen, things like Olympics for the differently abled are a waste of time. The author got the gist of what Stephen meant because he had spent years learning to play a Spanish guitar which was larger than his own size, and how he unstringed it one night very happily. Now, the 30 minutes came to an end, and the author smiled as he said, well, I think I have annoyed you enough, and continued to thank him for his time, but it was interrupted by Stephen, who instead asked him to stay. He waited for Stephen to say something next, and he offered the author some tea and a chance to show his garden. Even though the garden was as big as a park, Stephen showed him every inch and corner of it on his motorized wheelchair. The author tried not to come in his way. They couldn't converse a lot during that time as the letters on his screen disappeared in the glare. It felt as if the sun made him silent. Now, coming to the last paragraph, an hour later, we were ready to leave. I didn't know what to do. I could not kiss him or cry. I touched his shoulder and wheeled out into the summer evening. I looked back and I knew he was waving, though he wasn't. Watching him, an embodiment of my bravest self, the one I was moving towards, the one I had believed in for so many years alone, I knew that my journey was over for now. So, student, an hour passed and it was time to leave. The author did not know what to do as he left, as he could not kiss him or cry either. Thus, he touched his shoulder and went out into the summer evening in his wheelchair. The author knew Stephen was waving when he actually wasn't. As he looked back, the author expresses how glancing at Stephen was like looking at his bravest self, the one he was moving towards and the one he had believed in for so many years. He was well aware that his journey was over for now in England.